My thumbs are incredibly sore because I've spent the last few days obsessively playing Cuphead. It's a retro-style run-and-gun action game drawn in an amazing hand-animated style. The game is known for being pretty difficult, but don't let that put you off. Cuphead is never an unfair game, it just wants you to play with patience and care. So I've put together some tips that have really helped me along the way. Follow this guide and you'll beat the devil in no time at all. Also, one very quick thing, if you're worried about having some of the later bosses spoiled, have no fear because I'm only using bosses from the first island to help illustrate these tips. So let's get going. Let's start with one of the absolute basics. Are you actually hitting the enemy? Don't laugh at the idea, it's easy to get wrong. Every enemy has a hitbox where they are vulnerable to gunfire. You'll know when you're hitting it because the boss's body will flash white a tiny bit. The effect can be quite subtle, which is why it's important to look out for it. For example, during the fight with Ribby and Croaks, they transform into a fruit machine that will absorb all attacks until you hit the lever, so don't just pump bullets into the outside for nothing. Likewise, when you fight Cagney Carnation, the only part of its body that can take damage is the face. Fire into the stalk below and you won't see the damage flash that you're looking for. You should also look out for enemies that have a hitbox in the upper part of their body. This evil carrot can only be hurt by firing into his face, so you'll need to stand underneath him and fire upwards. You'll also need the same trick when fighting Goopy's gravestone. Pumping shots into the base is a huge waste of time. The only grave that you'll be digging is your own. Now this is probably the most important tip that I can give you, is always be firing. Never take your finger off that attack button, because as long as you have bullets coming out of you, you have a chance of hitting the boss characters and draining their health a little bit faster. With the button held down, you can focus on the most important business of dodging incoming attacks. When a boss is throwing loads of projectiles towards you, like the tears from the crying onion or the boxing gloves from this frog, it's better to focus on dodging these attacks and making sure your bullets are landing. As long as you are facing the enemy, it's likely that those shots will be connecting and you'll get through the fight in no time. Many of the bosses have attacks that create smaller enemies. The giant carrot summons lots of tiny homing carrots that track Cuphead, while Ribby and Croaks spit out burning bugs that slowly descend on the arena. Perhaps the most evil example of this is Cagney Carnation, who can turn into a machine gun that causes seeds to rain down from above and plant new enemies into the ground below. It's really important that you deal with these extra enemies before focusing on the boss itself. Many of these extra creatures may look small and harmless, but left untouched, they can cause much more trouble down the line. The homing carrots are slow, but if you leave one on screen when the big carrot starts shooting out psychic beams, it suddenly becomes much harder to dodge both attacks. Likewise, in the flower fight, you want to clear out the tiny black plants that sit on the bottom of the screen, otherwise you won't be able to hide down there when Cagney fills the top of the screen. And if you don't take care of the pod at the top of the screen, it makes jumping around much harder. I find that Cuphead's spread weapon is good for clearing out these enemy clusters. It fills the screen with loads of bullets, so we'll chop through the noise with ease. Cuphead's tutorial explains how to parry, but doesn't tell you why you should parry. For starters, every pink item you parry on screen earns you 1 bar of your X weapon. That's a special attack mapped to the B button that does loads of damage at once. The X bar gradually fills as you shoot bosses, but it's much quicker to parry instead. Parrying is also really important to increase your end of level grade. Once the boss is beaten, you are rated on your time, the amount of damage you took, and how many parries and X moves that you pulled off. Considering the last two are closely connected, make sure you're parrying those moves to build up that X bar. Some of the enemies hide their pink parry attacks pretty well. Goopy Le Grande, for example, only gives you one opportunity. When he eats his growth pill, 3 pink question marks pop up over his head. This is your only chance to strike, so do it. Later bosses hide their attacks in some really fiendish ways, so make sure to keep an eye out for them. I mentioned X special attacks, so wanted to offer a few words of wisdom. These more powerful shots are great at eating through an enemy's health bar, so you want to make sure you're using them at the best possible time. Every boss fight is split into stages. When a boss takes a certain amount of damage, they'll enter a new stage and start using new attacks. Because of this, I like to save my X attack for stages where I know I struggle against a particular attack. For For example, in the Ribby and Croaks fight, I'm not great at dodging those bouncing balls when the wind machine is blowing in my face, so using the X attack here helps me speed up that section and get to the next phase. It's a simple tip, but not wasting these moves on easier parts of the fight can really help speed up your progress. You also need to watch out for the downsides to these moves. Cuphead's standard Fireball X move is good, but it does push him back a little bit, so make sure you're not standing on the edge of a platform or near an enemy when you use it. You can also unlock a super move that you fire when he has a full X bar of 5 cards. This does huge damage, but it also leaves you vulnerable right at the end of the attack animation, so make sure you don't fire it when there are loads of projectiles heading your way. At the start of the game, you'll talk to a character on the bridge who gives you 3 coins. This isn't enough to buy a new weapon, but it can afford the smoke bomb, which is an incredibly useful tool. This charm turns Cuphead's dash move into a warp, during which he can't be hurt by attacks. In effect, it allows you to pass through enemy attacks, because when I equipped it, I cut down on so many accidental deaths that I'm kind of surprised the move is this cheap to buy. You see, the normal dash is great, but it still requires you to steer around the physical danger on screen. With the smoke bomb, you can dash through projectiles as they fly towards your face or pass through smaller bosses completely. In the earlier stages of the game, it's really useful against Grupo La Grande as you can dash through his bouncing body. You still have to watch out to make sure you're going to land somewhere safe, so you can't just spam it, but you might also want to switch to a different charm when you're doing run and gun levels with lots of platforming. Because Cuphead is invisible during the dash, it makes it a little bit harder to judge some of your jumps, but this is a small price to pay for one of the game's best moves. Once you've upgraded your dash attack, you'll want to start saving for a brand new weapon. They cost 4 coins, which you can easily collect in the nearby Forest Follies run and gun level. You have 3 guns to choose from at the outset, each with various pros and cons. The weapon that I'd avoid is the Chaser. This is very much built for beginners as the attacks hone in on the boss, so you don't need to worry too much about aiming. However, they are also quite underpowered, so you need to survive longer during the fight. You're honestly better off using your common pea shooter and keeping fire pressed down. You'll land plenty of hits this way, and they'll do more damage. Slightly better is the spread weapon. This one is kind of the shotgun of Cuphead. It's great at close range as it fires so many bullets at once, but it is useless when you're further away. The spread of shots is great for clearing the screen of smaller enemies, so it can be very useful in the run and gun levels. If you're fighting a large, slow-moving boss, this is also a sound option for pummeling them with damage. But my pick of the initial 3 weapons has got to be the roundabout. It's a little unconventional as the shots boomerang around Cuphead, but the bullets are big, which make it easy to hit stuff, and they do a huge amount of damage. As the shots go back and forth, they are useful for bosses which attack you from both sides of the screen, such as when Ribby and Croaks split up, as these attacks also fly behind you. It's also great for enemies that you run away from, like Goopy. You can turn your back on them and still land loads of hits. Honestly, when I equipped this weapon, I started chopping tens of seconds off my boss times, as it just eats through the health bars. If you only have 4 coins to spare, this is the weapon for you. So those are 7 tips to give you a head start in Cuphead. Like I said, it's a game that takes a little time to learn. If you just run in, you're going to die pretty quickly, but follow this advice and you can definitely take the edge off of it. And please do make sure to let us know in the comments if you found any awesome tricks to make the game easier. We definitely want to hear about your boss tactics. If you found this video useful, do hit the like button and subscribe to Xbox On for loads more great Xbox videos throughout the week. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye!